Hey everybody, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Jonathan Towers, and on behalf of New Trier Neighbors, I'd like to welcome you to this screening and panel discussion of the acclaimed documentary, How Jack Became Black. We believe tonight's discussion will be a special opportunity for productive, diverse, and civil dialogue about race and identity politics in America. New Trier Neighbors is a grassroots group of almost 1,000 residents here on the North Shore, which promotes free enterprise and common sense and the golden rule. We invite you to find out more about us at newtrierneighbors.org. After the documentary, we're going to go immediately to our panel discussion moderated by WVON radio personality Maze Jackson. Clarence Page regrets that a health issue at the last minute kept him from traveling, but he looks forward to joining us later in the year to continue this important discussion. Now, you're all invited to submit questions for the panel by emailing them to Maze, if you want, at jackbecameblack@gmail.com at any time this evening. We're also collecting questions, we're collecting questions in this format because our filmmaker, Eli Steele, who was born profoundly deaf, will be better able to answer questions submitted in written form. Please be succinct and indicate in the subject of your email to whom your question is directed. Or, if you want, you can write your questions on index cards that have been made available to you here, and they can be passed to the ends of the rows at the conclusion of the screening. Questions we don't get to, we are going to post them on our website and invite panelists to address them there. We would like to thank New Trier High School right here for providing us this facility and for the event staff who've been terrific to work with. We appreciate the many school faculty and administrators here this evening and want to especially say thank you to New Trier's Paul Sally, Tim Hayes, and Denise Dubrovic. New Trier Neighbors isn't just grassroots comprised. We're also, you won't be surprised to hear, grassroots funded. And we'd appreciate your contributions of any size if you'd like to help us bring more programs like this one to the community. You'll notice envelopes in your program that you can drop off on your way out or mail in. And without further ado, I'm pleased to present our filmmaker and head of Man of Steel Productions, Eli Steele, who's going to come on and say a few words about the film you're all about to see.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here, and especially in Chicago, where half of my family is from. And so I'm really excited to show this film here. People often ask me why I made this film, and the simple answer is that I found myself in a situation. I went to enroll my kid, Jack, in his public elementary school. And I was told to pick a primary race, and he is of so many different races, so which one do you pick? And worse, I was told that he would not be allowed to enroll in the school unless he picked a primary race. And the big question is, why? Why was that so important? And that's what started my whole journey pretty much throughout America to find the answer to the question. So I hope you enjoy this journey and the film, and thank you all for coming.
Hello, how is everybody? Did you enjoy the movie? Make some noise if you enjoyed the movie. You know what? That was awesome, and I want to say we've got a lot to talk about today. What do you think? A lot of discussion, a lot to unpack there. Now, before we get started, my name is Maze Jackson. I am the host of the WVON Morning Show. I host that every morning with my good buddy, I like to call him my main man, Charles Thomas from he used to be ABC 7. Now he has come to work with us on a daily basis. I want to encourage you all to tune into us. We have conversations like this every morning from 6 to 9. Now I'm going to say, based on this conversation, one of the things we ask every morning is, what's in it for the black people. And so I think that just sets the tone for what we've got here. But in the interest of time, I'm going to briefly introduce our incredible panel, but I want to just let you all know, check your bulletins so you can get some background information on everybody, but we don't want to go into too long introductions because we want to get right into it. But I also want to encourage you, if you have questions, you can write them on your note cards as well as you can send us an email. Now, our email address that you can send it to is jackbecameblack@gmail.com. Remember, the questions we can't get to will be posted on our website, and I think all of the panelists have agreed to go back and answer anything that we do not get to. So let's jump right into it. We'll begin by, I want to introduce our award-winning filmmaker, Eli Steele. Northwestern's Associate Provost and Chief Diversity Officer, Dr. Jabbar Bennett. Reverend Pastor Dr. Corey Brooks in the building. Now I want you all to take a moment. Now, these last two, I want you to give an extra special round of applause because they have graciously agreed to be here. It's on a school night, but they are our high school participants, and we want to make sure that they get their welcome as well. So I want to take a moment to thank or to welcome senior Kelly Allison. She's a New Trier senior and co-president of the African American Club. Let's give her a big round of applause. As well as Maddie Joseph. She is a New Trier senior and co-president of the Women in Engineering Club. And with that, let's just jump right into it. Dr. Jabbar Bennett, you saw the movie React.
I thought it was a very interesting film and a true story for many people in this country, not just in California, not just Eli's children. One of the most surprising things for me that I saw in the film, or that I realized in the film, was the lack of flexibility within the LA Unified School District regarding the selection of race being a requirement for students to actually be admitted. That stuck out to me as being something that was quite restrictive based on the fact that it should be an individual's choice to identify the way that they choose to identify and to be sort of not allowed to have an education, so to speak, or be a part of that sort of school district based on your choice not to identify or be able to identify the way you want it. Seemed very interesting to me.
Thanks, Dr. Bennett. Now I'm going to move down to Kelly. Kelly, talk to me about race. Does it still matter here today, especially being a millennial? Well, I don't think you're a millennial. A little bit younger. What do you phrase you guys now?
What do they phrase us?
Yeah, what is your category?
You know, I'm not even sure.
Okay. Well, so tell us, does race matter? Here at New Trier, you are the co-president of the African American Club. What made you decide that, why is an African American club necessary at New Trier?
Well, I think it's, so as president, co-president of African American Club, it's important for young black students on the North Shore to just have a community to be a part of. And it really has nothing to do with, you know, again, like the big topic of this documentary was race over character, character over race. No, it's just coming together in a community of a very specific, I guess, group of young black people who are blessed to have lived on the North Shore and have a certain type of experience. And I think, yeah, it's an experience that's different from a lot of the kids that I go to school with. So that's why it's especially important for us. But
Now, Eli, you seem to think that race as a construct, I took it that you thought it was a bad thing. Why?
As a construct, well, I mean, it's a man-made construct, and we obviously have the history 400 years of this history of living basically under the rule that white people came up with, literally. So we've defined America that way. And we continue to use that same rule under identity politics. In fact, the Wall Street Journal last week had an article where they kind of broke down the government hold on the race boxes. And instead of a multiracial check, more than one box, well, obviously they would do that. They would check 2 or more races. Under the one drop rule, they automatically default back into the minority box. So we're doing this today, and we're doing it as a way to achieve racial equity or racial justice. But it's really about power, and our society, in many ways, since 1960, has fallen backwards.
So, Eli, and I think that, so can we just be clear that this probably will not be the most politically correct discussion, but it will be a frank discussion. What I'd like to do, and let me just say this, because I think that one of the things that happens oftentimes is that everybody is so worried about saying the wrong thing or offending someone that we can't get to the meat of the subject. So what I'm going to ask us to do, it's okay, thank you. What I'm going to ask us to do is put on our thick skin today, right? I promise that I won't get all bent out of shape, and I'm going to ask our panelists not to get bent out of shape, but let's have a real conversation here. Now, I think here in Chicago, I think that's great what you were talking about, but I'm here from Chicago, right? And I did see what happened to, not Trayvon, but to Laquan McDonald. And when you say we can't ask about race or race shouldn't matter, I always say that sounds great until the police pull you over, right? And you're a black person and you're at 10 and 2 and you're wondering, could this end your life? This stop? And no one ever asks about my character. They just say, hey, now for you it's different because they made, you mixed race. So you've got some ambiguity there. But for a person like myself, I don't get to ignore my race. I don't get to hide from it. Corey, talk to me about race and how it plays out here in Illinois, in politics, in business, in equitable participation.
Well, first of all, let me say I think the film was really, really great, and I appreciate it. I think here in Illinois, we have exactly what the film was saying, is that we oftentimes put race over character in all areas. I see it at the tollway where I'm on the board, where we're having to classify people as by their race for contracts oftentimes. I see it in our neighborhood where certain individuals feel as if they're left out because of race. But I think what ultimately has to happen, and I don't know how we get there, but I'm prayerful that we'll one day get there, is that we have to start seeing each other as the human race. That does not mean that I'm not proud of my African American heritage or my African heritage, but at the same time, I must lift up the fact that I'm human and that there's really only one race, and that's the human race. And if we can ever get to that, which is going to be very difficult, I think then America will be a better place, Illinois will be a better place, Chicago will be a lot better place.
So, thank you, Corey. Maddie, so you've started you are the co-president of the Women in Engineering Club. It seems like that's another way to separate instead of bringing people together. Tell me why you felt the need to be a part of a kind of a separate organization instead of everybody being equal.
I think my reason for being drawn to Sweets is very similar to Kelly's reason for being drawn to African American Club. In the STEM community, women are a minority. I don't think that's the defining characteristic of the women of STEM, but it is a reality. And I think that building that community of something you have something very intrinsically in common with, other people is really important to establishing confidence in what you do. And I really enjoy having a community of women that have a similar interest in STEM education and STEM professions as I do, just to communicate about those things specifically, because as much as it's enlightening to seek out diverse perspectives, it's also really comforting and can be equally as fruitful to seek out common perspectives.
So I would ask both of you, is it basically there's comfort in finding people that are like you?
I think that's
Yes.
undeniable.
Yeah.
I think that's why the construct of race exists in the first place. I mean, consider early man. The people who looked like you, the people who were from your tribe, were the people that were the least likely to kill you.
Ooh, you know what? I think I gotta
welcome, Mommy.
We gotta transfer our kids up to New Trier. This is awesome education. Let me jump in. Go ahead, Eli.
I think there's one thing is important to understand in America. We've always had interest groups. That's the association. That's something that's very American that we've always had. The Puerto Rican Women Voters League or the Engineering Club. So what's going on is more of an affinity, more of just a natural, coming together of interest. The difference is when the government practices race. That's the difference. That's the line.
But I think the challenge becomes when the government institutionalized race.
Yes.
Can we really ignore it? Which gets me to Molly Gallagher's question, which is, even if race is a construct, is it reasonable to pretend that it doesn't exist when it has clearly been constructed and construction of it has clear and harmful consequences? And then to that effect, when is it time to stop?
You move your microphone. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you all able to understand the question? Let me read it one more time. Molly Gallagher's question. Even if race is a construct, is it reasonable to pretend that it doesn't exist when it clearly has been constructed and the construction of it has clear and harmful consequences? To that effect, when is it appropriate to stop balancing the scale? At what point should we cease to be concerned? Jabbar.
Race definitely matters. You can't ignore it. I think when you do ignore it or you ignore the history of race in this country, that's when I think harmful things happen. The history of race, the history of racism, the history of structural, institutionalized systemic racism is real in the U.S. It's good to acknowledge it, but it's not good and shouldn't be a practice that we sort of lean on it, so to speak. But I think understanding the experiences of people, having empathy, understanding what people have gone through and how those experiences over time have impacted them, have impacted their situations, their circumstances, and so forth is very important. But again, not leaning on that as an excuse, but acknowledging it and understanding that everybody has had a very different experience. No one has had the very same experience, nor opportunities, nor exposure.
And I'm gonna go to Kelly. Kelly, with this same thing, let me ask you, do you feel as though you are penalized for race at times? You know, let me give you an example. I got accepted to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, ILL, with a 4-year academic scholarship. And the assumption was that I got that scholarship because I was black. Do you feel as though there is this concept of reverse racism, that you get perks and benefits because you're black?
I hear that a lot, especially since I've had to go through the college application process just recently. I hear in the hallways or around people, so-and-so only got into this school because they're this. And for me, as an obvious person of color, I'm a black woman, it's disheartening because I know that I've worked hard and I, put everything out on the table. And if I get into a school, for example, it's because of my merit and how hard I've worked. It shouldn't be because I'm one or the other or I'm a certain color. I do feel like sometimes, especially since it's so easy to say somebody got in because of XYZ, even though nobody ever truly knows it could have been a flip of a coin or something like that. To that extent, I do believe sometimes it is penalizing.
Yeah, I know that experience. I've been there. And so one of the questions I want to ask you, Eli, is what does America owe black people for the 400 years of chattel slavery, and then beyond the 400 years of chattel slavery, the continuing of Jim Crow? You know, when we look at Chicago public schools, because, you know, I looked at this documentary, and you would assume that no black kids should be at college based on merit. But then when we look and we see the study that tells us that 1 in 4 black kids in Cook County, in Chicago public schools, will go to a failing school, public school, when 1% of white kids will, when 1/3 of Latinos, it seems as though there is some inequity somewhere in the system, and it has been based on race. What does America owe us?
That's a good question. Just based on the last part about the disparities in school, in LAUSD, the school started with the most population under the elementary school. Then the population dropped off, and people would say that's white flight. I don't think it's white flight, I think it's the quality of education. I know that I'm gonna have to talk to my ex-wife. We're gonna have to figure out how to get my kid, unless he gets into a really good magnet school, get him into a parochial school, just to give him a chance, because the school has failed. So it's not race, or in Los Angeles, which is the second biggest school. Now, what does America owe black people for 400 years of oppression? That's a great question, and my short answer is get out of the picture, the government, get out.
Right, but if the government created it, how do they get out?
I'll tell you why. The government is institutionalized racism for 400 years, and then the government wants to come up with a remedy to fix that. And all they have done is, you know, the girl right here has to deal with the issue of people coming up to her and saying, is you really gay in? Or is it because you're black? That's from the government. Or, you know.
So, Jabbar, let me ask you though. Do you think that, I still think America owes us, but isn't affirmative action the reason black accomplishments are diminished? That's from Betsy. I didn't say that.
So the question was, is affirmative action the reason that accomplishments by black people have been diminished?
Yes.
Overall, I'll say no. I think affirmative action has done some good, especially in the very beginning, because there were laws and policies and practices that prohibited people who were different from entering the workforce, from having certain types of jobs, receiving certain types of education, and that included women and people of color. But as you will see during that time since the institution and now, people have proven themselves to be capable to succeed in any setting if given the opportunity. So I don't think it's hindered the success of black people or any member of any marginalized group.
Let me toss this one to the panel. Eli, I want you to get involved in this one too, and actually I think we'll start with you. Do you think that racial identity is viewed differently by people? Is your racial identity viewed differently by anyone else because you're a child of biracial parents?
Well, I mean, as a child, I mean, you are obviously exposed to 2 different worlds. So, I mean, obviously, you, Steve, and my family had to struggle with bringing 2 cultures together and so forth. So you grow out of that, and you get just by that, you get some other truth that some other Americans don't have. And that's sort of something the multiracial do have. Not all of them do. Some of them do choose to embrace one race only. But we do have that knowledge, and we do things. As you were talking earlier about police pulling over. My father got pulled over. My father got his check rejected. But one thing I learned from him was that he was always the better man. And yes, it's unfair, but he would educate them. He would say, hey, you know, my wife came here, bought the hot dog from you. You took the check from her. Now you won't take the check from me. And guess what?
What?
By taking the high road, that woman became our best friend.
You know, Okay, so it seems like we're always expected to take the high road, right? I feel like black folks are always expected to take the high road. We get lynched, we get burned, and they tell us, take the high road all the time. And I don't know how that always works out. Let me ask you a question, Jabbar, and I'm gonna go down the list. Jabbar, Corey, when someone says they're mixed race as a black man, what do you say? Like, if they say black, white, mixed, and someone says mixed, how do you respond?
I say, okay, that's who they are.
Do you really?
I didn't choose their parents and tell their parents to conceive a child. So yeah, if that's who you are, that's what you are. But even with mixed race, often I will let Corey respond. Oftentimes people may identify with one race over the other, and sometimes that's the one that appears more dominant physically. And that's often because they don't have a choice, but because people always just they think they are who they see those people to be, meaning physically.
See, so because if I was to hear someone say they were mixed, my instinct would be that you're selling out. That you're selling out. My instinct, and maybe it's because I'm so inundated with one drop, right? But if you got a black parent in my mind, you black, period. Corey, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's what lens you look through. And so for me, I look through a faith lens. And my faith lens tells me when I see people who say that they're multiracial, that's okay with me, because I'm trying to get beyond classifying people just by their race.
But Corey, you on 63rd and Halsted, brother.
63rd and King.
Excuse me, that's even worse. 63rd and King. And so on 63rd and King,
Yeah.
if some curly-haired sister comes walking up to you, light, fair skin, and she
Yes.
says, I'm biracial. Really?
I'm cool with that.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm okay with that is because I want to move beyond labeling and
But have
defining
we?
people. Because I believe when you constantly are trying to define people by color, you're really trying to confine them. I really do believe when you are constantly putting these labels on people, you're really trying to limit them. And I think for us, in our culture, that oftentimes we've allowed people to put these tags on us and put us in these boxes, and because of that, we've limited ourselves, and we've allowed people's perception of us to limit us, and we got to get beyond. I believe we have to get beyond that somehow, some way.
Thanks, Corey. I'm going to ask, because you know what, I'm going to ask our two teenagers, right? Because that to me is the future, and that's where we're going. So Kelly, when someone tells you that they're mixed race, how do you respond?
That they're mixed race, because that's who they are. I mean, if it's not my place to categorize that one person. If somebody came up to me and told me my mom is black and my dad is white, how could you force somebody to choose between one side versus the other? You're not really white, or you're not really black. Just the alienation, I can't imagine the emotional turmoil that must come with having to deal with two quarreling sides. I mean, I cite Meghan Markle as an example, our new American princess overseas. She's got a black mother and a white father, and on the internet all you hear are black people saying she's not one of us, and white people saying she's not one of us either. I can't imagine how emotionally turbulent that must be.
You know what? Very good answer.
Thank you.
And let me say one more time, shout out to Nutria for the wonderful students and the articulate students that they have brought out for us. Okay, so tell me, what are your thoughts as it relates to race And if someone were to tell you that they were interracial, Maddie?
I'd say me too. I am also interracial, and I suppose when most people look at me, the first thing they think is, oh my God, she's so pretty, not like, oh, she's really like racially ambiguous. But that's the reality of the situation.
Are you saying that you can't be pretty if you're like not? Okay, I'm gonna stop. Go ahead.
But
So what races are you mixed with by
I'm
curious?
Asian and white.
So-
Which, you know, a lot of people, to a lot of people these days, I might as well just be all white.
That,
So-
and can I say that's how I thought? Like, honestly, when I think of mixed race, I really only think of like black and white, fundamentally.
I think that's the reality of the situation. That's kind of the sad paradox of being mixed race, especially not a conventional mixed race like I feel that I am. There's society which basically tells you race is an immutable part of who you are. But for me, at least in my experience as a mixed race individual, that identity has been very fluid. I feel more connected with my Asian culture sometimes, more connected with my white culture. And that's kind of being between a rock and a hard place when you feel like one part of you is supposed to be really static, but it feels dynamic. And when, I don't know, I mean, not that you're crushing my soul here, Maze, but like to
No,
hear
please no.
like,
I wanna be
oh, I mean,
inspiring.
you're Asian and you're white, that's not really mixed race. Like that can be a little bit, to say the least, frustrating at times because I don't really like people telling me that my subjective identity is anything other than what I define it as.
Goodness gracious. Who is the enrollment director? I need to get a. Let me ask you all a question, because one of the things that I watched, as I watched the documentary, it felt as though black was a negative, that it was a stigma, that if I was labeled as black, that it would automatically be a negative to me. Is there ever a time when labels can be empowering? Eli.
Well, I think you're showing the example of label. I mean, you're showing your view. Because why would I ever think that black is a negative? I think black, another thing, we're talking about multiracial boxes. What does multiracial mean? I never even heard the term probably before 2011.
Me either.
Yeah.
It was black or white.
Exactly. My whole life I'm black and Jewish. I mean, I come from the black, I come from Jewish, and obviously you see my history. You can't deny one or the other. So it's this situation, so you're coming here and you're saying that's negative. No. I grew up in a black militant family. I grew up and I saw all aspects of blackness, and I never saw two black people who were alike. So as a motivational, I'm looking at people individual, I'm looking at Warrington Hudlin, who's the producer of House Party, Boomerang. He's like my godfather. He's nothing like my father. You know, I mean, there's no two black people that are alike, so, and that goes
But
into
there's something
motivation.
that's similar. And we have some very similar experiences. And you know, I take pride fundamentally in being black. I wear it as a sign of a badge of pride that we've survived. You know, I feel like when we talk about the Jewish community and they say never forget, and they say this is the struggles that we went through, no one says to them, stop thinking about it. Shut up, we don't want to hear about it. It's never forget. No one says, why don't you move on?
No, that's not true. My grandfather, probably 1949, his wife just died. He got a 2-year-old daughter. He doesn't know English. Everybody in the room crying, What are you going to do? We just lost all of our survivors. You know what he said? Get out. Go get a job. Forget about it. He had one conversation about the Holocaust with my mother. That's why you see me in the documentary saying, I think most of the family died in Treblinka. We have no information. He shut that door. Everybody in that room died, middle class or wealthy.
Okay. Corey, thoughts?
On
Can labels be empowering?
I think you can be a part of your culture without neglecting your culture. I think the problem becomes when you allow government to put labels on you, to move you from one category to another, to advance one race or to leave one race, make one race feel superior or inferior. I think that's the problem. I think I can still be proud of who I am as a man, just like Eli when he showed the gentleman from Florida. He was a proud man, and I think we have to get to the point to where we're just proud individuals.
Does
proud
anybody
people.
tell proud individuals not to celebrate St. Patrick's Day?
I don't think.
Why is that pride different?
I don't think it is. I think that's, again, I think you can have your culture, but I think the problem becomes when you infuse government into my culture, and government tries to tell me or say to me that I am entitled to certain rights and privileges because I am a certain color. That's when the problem comes in. Should I celebrate Kwanzaa? Absolutely. That's my heritage and my culture. Should I celebrate the way we do other ethnic things? Absolutely, that's my culture. But the moment government infuses itself into my culture, that's when the problems start.
Speaking of government, and I'm gonna start all the way down with Allie, and we're gonna come back this way. Why did President Barack Obama choose black?
You ask
Why
me.
did he choose?
Why did he?
Black?
So he was mixed race. Why did he choose? Why didn't he call himself biracial? Why didn't he decide to? Why did he say I'm gonna be black?
Well, okay. First of all, I would like to preface that I have no moral standing to actually evaluate Barack Obama's choice of what race he
You got
identified
it.
himself to the public
Okay.
as. My guess, as a hardcore 18-year-old cynic, is that it politically benefited him. It's the same reason I write about being a female engineering interested student on every one of my damn applications. It gives me a leg up. You gotta be ruthless to win, Mace. And being black gave him a distinct advantage up against John McCain.
So wait, are you suggesting that there was a black skin privilege for Barack Obama?
I think that privilege.
I think there was.
Okay,
there
sure.
was.
All right, you think
I
there
think
was.
that Barack Obama made a lot of people feel good about their racial. I could vote for a black guy, right? And then he turned out to be kind of who he was, and he was kind of vanilla. I'm sorry. If you listen to my show, I'll tell you some real truth. So, Kelly, your thoughts. Let me back up. For you, was there a sense of pride that Barack Obama was the quote-unquote first black president? Did that play into it for you?
Well, I guess growing up, I was 8, so.
You got me.
God bless.
Yes, and then I was 12.
Okay, you got me. Moving on. But let me ask a question. Does the fact that Barack Obama was a black president, does that ring somewhere for you? Does that have a special meaning to you?
Not particularly, and I'm going to phrase it like this. I am happy to be able to say that in my lifetime I've seen a black president, just like I hope to say in my lifetime I've seen a female president, whenever that happens. But I don't think that because he was black that that inspired any specific pride or in me. I really don't think
But
so.
you know, I think that that's typical of our young people who are in a different place than us. I would tell you that if you were to ask me, right up until he was standing on, matter of fact, until he got sworn in. Would there ever be a black president in my lifetime? I said there was no way possible. It would never happen in my lifetime. Corey, did the fact that Barack Obama was black make him special to you?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that I was just, I'm saying that I think you can celebrate your culture. It's no different as if a Jewish person had won the presidency. I'm sure Jewish people would have been excited that there was a Jewish president. But I think, I think it's okay to celebrate your culture, your history, your heritage. But it is not okay, again, for government to infuse themselves to the degree to where one group feels superior or inferior or another. My thing with him becoming president was I thought that it was moving us closer to a society where we were getting beyond color. So for me, I was grateful and thankful because, okay, we have a black president. Now, can we get beyond this color thing? But it seems as if it's gotten even more divided, and that's real unfortunate.
Jabbar, I'm gonna ask you, and then I'm gonna switch the question. Jabbar, President Obama, was it special to you?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because he was the first black president, but he wasn't just the black people's president, he was America's president, and he did a lot for everybody.
I'm still trying to figure out what he did for black folks.
Well, what he did for,
I'm just saying, we got the first black president, and I'm saying, like, we got the third bathroom, we got the DACA, we got and I felt like I didn't think he was gonna paint the White House black. But I did think he was going to give us more than singing Amazing Grace when the shooting in West Virginia, was it Virginia?
And he surely did that.
Right.
He gave black people and everybody in between lots of things.
Hope.
He gave us more than hope as well. He did very substantive things through policy and through supporting many programs and efforts, a lot which benefited people who were of lower socioeconomic class. And a lot of black people have, sort of fallen to that group as well. So I was proud of him for that. But what I will also say, while I was happy to see him elect at the same time, I was concerned as well. Because I knew then, and so far, maybe I've been proven wrong, that the country really wasn't ready. I didn't think for a radical choice and a radical voice and a radical presence like Barack Obama. But he survived, and I'm grateful for that, because he was black, identified that way, whether he chose to or not. That's how people would have perceived him and did and have.
Got it. Lee, real quick, did it make a difference that he was the first black president to you?
Of course, I understand the whole feeling behind that. I did look at him as a multiracial, though, and I interviewed multiracial, 50 of them across the country, and almost every one of them said that he should have chosen the multiracial identity, but chose the black identity for power.
Okay, I got to do this real quick. Multiracial or black? Was Barack Obama multiracial or black?
He's black because he stays black.
Was he multiracial or black?
Black.
Was he multiracial or black?
Multiracial.
Was he multiracial or black?
Multiracial, but if he identified as black, then
Multiracial or black?
He is multiracial. I also I guess the question of Obama being the first black president was only put to those of us with a drop of black blood. But I would like to address that question. I would sincerely like to thank President Obama for busting down the mixed race / ethnic wall for me. When I come through, people are going to be in a tizzy over the fact I'm the first woman to become president, not the first mixed race individual to become president. So that's my take on that one. You're welcome.
Well, you know what? I think that there's a lot that goes in. I think that right now in our community, there's a lot of discussion that's going on, even as we look at the Obama Library and the benefits. And I think one of the things that's happening now, particularly in Chicago, and probably not in a world sense, but in Chicago, as we look back over the 8 years and everybody starts counting the money and the resources and what came back, there starts to be some questions. I'm gonna go to you, Jabbar. are the black graduations at Northwestern the same as whites or Asians? And if not, what do you think should be done specifically to address it and how?
You said graduations?
Graduation rates.
Oh, sure, yeah. The black graduation rates at Northwestern are not very different or different from the white, Asian American, Latino rates. We're over 90% in each of those areas. And our athletes are even graduating at higher rates than that, black athletes included.
So I want to speak to that because, you know, as I watched this film, I felt as though it left us with the impression that sometimes black folks are not equally as smart, and they would not be going to college if it were not for these racial set-asides. Can you talk to me a little bit about maybe some of the disparities that prevent black folks from getting to college or that would prevent them from getting into those major universities? Jafar?
Me? So let me say first that by diversifying, we are not in any way compromising the integrity or rigor of any education or thinking about admitting, in the case of a university, students at my university anyway, admitting people who aren't qualified to be there. I think it's important also to provide context for this conversation, understanding that at places like Northwestern and other selective institutions in the Ivies, that many of the black students who were first admitted many years ago, pre-1960s, were athletes, and they came on athletic scholarships. That is no longer the case at our types of schools. But the types of things that can often prevent not just black students, but lower income students from being admitted and surviving at a place like Northwestern is rigorous is the type of preparation exposure they have in high school. So what type of public schools did they attend? How well resourced were those schools? Did they have access to AP and IB courses? Did they have people who could teach those? And did they have the preparation to be able to make a smooth transition into a place like Northwestern, as well as having the grades and the test scores for ACT, SAT? So it's really a matter of zip codes often, and sort of where where you're born and who you're born to.
You know, it's funny that you say that. I went to Bolingbrook High School. Go Raiders. And so my experience for high school and public school education was completely different. And then I came to Chicago and got elected to the local school council. And I don't know if you guys remember when Governor Rauner, and I'm not flagging for Governor Rauner, but do you remember when he said, these schools look like crumbling prisons, and everybody got all bent out of shape? I was thinking the same thing to myself when I went into a CPS school and I was looking around and I was like, well, where's the facilities? Where's the gym? Where's the track? Where's the pool? Where are all the things that make a kid want to come to this school? When I was walking through this campus, getting lost, I knew why James Meeks was trying to put people on a bus to come out here, because it's like, you gotta see it to believe it, right? You're looking around and you're saying, wait a minute, my kids are being shortchanged of resources, etc. And then I'm sitting up here with these two high school students who probably could write better, speak better, take my job at the radio station because they've got all the tools in the toolbox. And so one of the things that just concerned me about how we talk about and the narrative as it relates to black kids, because I'll tell you that black kids are some of the smartest, most innovative. That's how we come up with all these crazy things. It's just not channeled in the right direction. And so when I went to U of I, and I gotta say this real quick, I went to U of I, and when I got there, I went in and I started school and I registered like everyone else. But all of the other black students that came from Chicago, if they didn't come from Whitney Young or Kenwood or whatever, I started at Rhetoric 105. Some of them started at Rhetoric 103 and 104 before they could even start. So they had to do 2 years of college to come up to college grade level before, and they went on, and now some of these people are the most successful people, but they came from bad places. And I just want to make sure that when you sit here and you look around, and I'm saying, look at this auditorium and look at all of this, most kids that are coming from the city that are trying to compete don't have anywhere close to these type of opportunities, or they're focused on a lot of different things besides academics. And I think it's important that when we tell these stories, that it's not always just the bad kids and their parents didn't care. There's just a lot of different challenges. Hey, I want to make sure you.
I just want to it's important that if you look in Lyndon B. Johnson in here, in the second part, the first part is we can't, oppress people for 400 years and have them come to the starting line and expect them to compete. The second part is the quote most people overlook. He says, all citizens must have the ability. Now, we betray that when we went to racial preferences instead of the original form of affirmative action. So we should study here in a society with racial preferences. Now, identity politics here make things worse, and that's why I'm in Chicago. There's a school just down the street called Nichols Middle School, and I did some research on it, and basically they segregated the faculty by race, which tells you they're going to start doing that to the student. They're going to start racializing the black students. And why do they do that? Because 30% of black students are on reading level. 80% of white students are on the reading level. So they say, must be race. So now they're going to bring race in. And we know that's an opportunity cost. You're going to be pushing Shakespeare out. You're going to be pushing all this stuff in. You're going to take Peggy McIntosh, who's in here, and put her Bush in there. That's disturbing.
So, I think we have a very unique history here in Chicago as it relates to race, as it relates to education. If you look at the Willis wagons, if you look at how schools were segregated through the dailies, et cetera, there's just a lot of history that I think is a little bit different here in Illinois, the dynamics that we deal with. Hey, I was informed to let you all know that we are taking your note card questions as well as questions from the email. So some of these questions that we're reading are actually coming from your note cards. Please don't forget you can also email your questions to the Gmail account. Corey, this question is for you. Talk about racism not being the biggest problem in the black community, and can you talk about what the biggest problems are?
Well, I can tell you what I believe the biggest problem in America is, and it's not racism. I think there is a color problem. It's not black, white, yellow, or brown, but green. And I think,
amen.
Right. I think the problem is poverty. And I think impoverished people are disadvantaged, whether they are impoverished people on the south side of Chicago or impoverished people in the hills of Tennessee. Poor people get bad education. Poor people have bad neighborhoods. Poor people have access to some of the worst hospitals. So it's a poverty issue, and I think if we could do better as Americans dealing with poverty and dealing with people who are poor, I then think we could do a whole lot better with the race issues as well.
Let me piggyback off that one. Why does it seem like, and I'm going to go to the Democrat-Republican part that we saw here, no Republicans coming to the black community, and we saw all of that, and it's a conversation that we have regularly. Why does it seem like the conversation when we talk about black folks always revolves around poverty, social services, and the safety net as compared to economics? You know what? I'm gonna go to the professor, Dr. Jabbar.
Sure.
Can you tell us why do you think the conversation when it comes to black folks is always about social services and welfare and things of that nature?
Opposed to economics, as you said, but
yes,
sort of
compared
more
to economics.
sophisticated financial sort of service and support. Well, I think this really goes back to the beginning and the fundamentals where we think about 400 plus years of oppression and then freedom and then expecting people to be able to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, so to speak, and just know what to do and how to survive. Black people, black families in this country for the most part compared to white families and maybe other races as well, at least Asian American families, don't have the type of wealth but are sort of making a good living through income, but don't have things that have been amassed and don't have things that have been passed down to them. So we think about what money does and what money does over time and how investment works and those types of things, and being able to teach the children the value of investments and passing on those types of resources. That's lacking, I would say, overall in the Black community, because still, when you look at the types of jobs that Black people have in different industries, the level that they have in these organizations as well, they're not in the positions where they can make a lot of money, make a lot of decisions. This is overall, this is very, very general, but we're just not there yet, I would say, as people. So, we're not ready to have the conversation because we're not at the table.
All right, I'm gonna go down to Kelly. Kelly, what is your definition of Black? What does it mean to be Black?
That's a loaded question.
Hey.
What does it mean to be Black? Well, that's such a subjective question. I mean, for me to be Black, given, how I was raised, where I was born, is different from, the definition of what it means to be Black from someone who lives 30 minutes away downtown. I mean, for me, what it means to be Black, I guess within my community, is just knowing that, unfortunately, and this might be self-imposed, but that I might have different expectations or certain expectations that I have to meet, or big shoes to fill. But it's not always bad. It's also that, my hair looks different, my skin color looks different, I eat different things. What does it mean to be Black? I don't know.
I think you got it.
From person to person.
Yep. And I think it is personal. Lee, what about you?
Actually, it's a great question. After my grandfather grew up in segregation, on the South Side, could never be more than a truck driver. With one of the most well-read books. I mean, all his 4 students had a master's degree or PhD or better, so obviously he was doing the best. And my father got caught up in the Black Power movement in the 70s, and there was Black this, Black that, and all that. And he said, what is Black? And that's a very important question, because this is a man who was born in 1900 in Camp Nelson, Kentucky. And what that tells you is, throughout segregation, he refused to allow white supremacy to define him. And he refused to be Black, according to white supremacy. So what he was telling my father was, no, you have a chance to be individual. You have a chance to grab the American dream. And one other thing, I grew up with 2 phrases in my house: Black Power and Soul Power, S-O-U-L. Soul Power, Black Power means blackness. Soul Power means old man can. You can't do this, you can't go over there, you can't be that. So soul power is something that we've lost, because that's how you become an individual. And like you say, if you take the high road, well, that's part of it, but soul power, no, I'm deaf. I'm deaf at soul power means you live in an unfair society.
You're for Wakanda?
No, not quite, but we lost that thing, and it's a very important thing, because it has to do with the internal, it has to do with the individuality, not with the skin color.
Talk to me, Doc. What does it mean to be Black? Not you, Corey, you go last.
Cool.
Dr. Jabbar Bennett.
Oh, you're asking me?
Yes,
I'm so
sir.
sorry. What does it mean to be Black? For me, what it means to be Black is to be proud, to be strong, to be resilient, to acknowledge my ancestry in this country, my place in this country, in this society, based on the access to opportunities I've had. It means being a person of color. It means being a complex, and maybe even to some people a complicated person, but it's something that I embrace, and it's just what makes me me. It makes
Cool.
me unique.
Corey? Black.
I think the gentleman in the film said it best when he was talking about being an overcomer, an achiever. I think being individualistic, one of the things that I like that Eli said is that we have to become individualistic. We have to allow ourselves as individuals to have power within, and I think that is so important. Whether you're Black or white, you have to individually find the power within yourself to be able to achieve and be able to face any obstacles and overcome. That's where it really is. It's not in the fact that I'm Black, it's in the fact that I'm an individual, first and foremost.
You know, I think for me, I think black is being, in my definition, a direct descendant of chattel slavery, right? So I think that there are Caribbeans. I think there's a variety of black folks in the diaspora, but I fundamentally believe that there is a unique experience for people who are direct descendants of chattel slavery. Yeah, I'm gonna probably get in trouble for this, but I don't really consider Barack Obama black. I consider him African American. His father was African from Africa, and his mother was American white. I don't necessarily feel that he shares the common experiences growing up that we did as a black person. He was in Hawaii, he was in Indonesia. He's got the color, but I don't know if he still shares the same experiences that black folks that grew up in Chicago may have. Now that's my own personal, but it's a debate that we are having daily now on our show as it comes out, as we start, because it's this same debate. Did he deny his mom? Does he deny the other half of his heritage? And if his father was from Africa, did he really have that same experience, which is part of the reason we thought he was a little latent on like the Trayvon Martins, et cetera. I'm gonna ask a couple, there's some more questions here. We're taking questions directly from the audience as well as the note cards and the emails. One of the questions is, this question is for Maze. When you say you're owed, does that mean you show up lacking or less than whole because you're black? If so, isn't that owed feeling put you at the back of the line? Isn't that of your own doing? So let me say this.
I didn't hear that question.
I think that you cannot ignore the 400 years of chattel slavery. And I think as we continue to try and push that to the back, and the more that you try and ignore it, it becomes dismissive. I don't ever think that anyone has ever told the Jewish, well, let me not say no one has ever told them, but they fought back, did not say you shouldn't get reparations. You shouldn't be made whole for what was done to your people. So do I walk into any situation like, oh, you owe me something? No. I go into every situation knowing that I gotta run faster, stronger, do everything, and I make no excuses. But it doesn't change the fact that I know that we were done wrong, and that has not been addressed in this country. It's nothing to cry about and it's nothing to whine about. I'm not gonna stop achieving. But I do think that at some day you gotta pay what you owe. Now, I'm going to go to Maddie. Have you heard about this talk of reparations?
Sure, in school all the time.
Well, and should black people get reparations for what happened to them in this country? Would that address this issue of race?
I hardly feel that it would be appropriate if we consider like the economic implications of reparations, just paying out the descendants of slavery money. It's blood money, first of all. I think it rights no wrongs that have been committed in the past. And second of all, I don't really quite understand the logistics of how that would work. Are you going to trace back the genealogy of every black person in America? Or are you just going to assume that they're all the direct descendants of chattel slaves? It doesn't really seem economically sound if we want to be sterile about it, and I don't think it's particularly fundamentally sound when you get down to it. It fails to rectify the true wrongs that the experiencers of slavery suffered, and it doesn't do much to improve the plight of the victims of institutionalized racism today.
Interesting. That's funny. I didn't see, well, I had a comment for that. Let me just say that I think it is interesting that the people who make, and this isn't to you, but I think that it's funny when we talk about reparations and trying to make whole how it's difficult. We spend how many billions of dollars on wars and everything else, and they're not economically sound. I think that if we're ever going to take race out of this, there has to be an equalizer somewhere. I just think we got to get an equalizer. Kelly, any thoughts on reparations?
Yes. So, to my understanding, we hear this term 40 acres and a mule. That's what descendants of slaves were promised, that they would get 40 acres and a mule as reparations. And some people would argue it was what we were promised, and it doesn't matter if it's 2018, we still deserve 40 acres and a mule, as, a sort of consolation prize. I don't know. But like to Maddie's point, I don't see how today that would, solve anything. I guess the history of just the idea of land and then an animal for hundreds of years.
Can we get a Cadillac instead? Can I take the 40 acres and a lac?
Even then,
Gotcha.
I just don't, first of all, I think it might be too late for that. Second of all, I also think there's just no one thing to quantify or to make up for just hundreds of years of enslavement. I feel like, I just feel like it's a little late for that. And also, how could you sum up an apology of sorts until basically?
I think that was a tough question. I think you did a great job. Give her a hand. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we have to wrap up. This is our last question of the evening. I want to thank you all for being such an awesome audience. I want to thank our panel. Let me read this last one and then we'll get you out of here. When America has a history of oppressing Asian Americans, why are Asian Americans excluded from affirmative action for school?
Don't need it.
You want to take that?
Well, they're outperforming. Because, they're outperforming. I grew up in the Bay Area, and you see in the home, there's these, working the bus stop. It's just the value that they put in, where they put the values in. I was very fortunate to have parents that put the value in study group, being home. You can play basketball after you finish your homework, or play football, and that was the value. And it was expected to be, you had to perform at a certain level. And I was on the board of a nonprofit for deaf children. And most of our people were undocumented immigrants. And we made them sign a contract that said you have to go to college, and these are 4-year-olds. And these are people who don't know English or anything. And guess what? We have a 100% graduation rate. And the reason why is we have expectations. We put the value on that. And that's a simple answer.
All right. Dr. Jabbar Bennett, I'm going to ask you to give us the last on that, and then we're going to wrap it up. When America has a history of oppressing Asian Americans, why are Asian Americans excluded from affirmative action for school?
I don't feel that Asian Americans may be included from admissions in schools because of overperformance. I think it may be overrepresentation based on the proportion related in the population. For example, schools don't necessarily admit students based on quotas, but when you look at the general population of Asian Americans, their representation within colleges and universities, especially in certain areas, is greater than their proportion of sort of college age or sort of the general population of students. So I think schools use that type of rationale when they're considering admissions.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you it has been an honor. I want to thank the New Trier neighbors for having this, but hold it. I want you all, because we can do this all at once and then we get everybody out of here. I want to thank our filmmaker, Eli Steele, Northwestern Associate Provost and Chief Diversity Officer, Dr. Jabbar Bennett, Pastor Corey Brooks, Kelly Allison, and Maddie Joseph for being here tonight. Give them a big round of applause. Thank you all for being here tonight. How Jack Became Black. Make sure you check it out. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, and if you get a chance, tune in every day, Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 for the WVON Morning Show with your host, Maze Jackson.
Great job. I just want to say
There you
a
go.
couple of words. Thanks, everybody, for coming. If you liked what you saw here tonight, please take a look at our website, nurtureneighbors.org, and you have envelopes you could look at. Tell us what you think. We want to hear from you. They're obviously for fundraising purposes, too, and we look forward to staying in touch with us for future events like this in the community. Thank you.